Welcome, lava monsters, mind-controlled civilians, and android companions again to episode 489 of an Unearthly podcast, streaming live on the 12th of September 2023, and featuring Scream of the Shalka, written by Paul Cornell and starring Richard E. Grant as the Doctor, Sir Derek Jacobi as the Master, and Sophia Okonedo as Allison Cheney. I am Bill Sylvia, the one in black. And speaking of British media, my copy of Legacy of the Crystal just arrived in the mail today. With me are color commentator Alex Fireheart
Hello.
and technical director Mad Matt Winchell.
What? I have to make a joke because as we were doing setup, Twitch decided to try and deafen me.
Which I guess is very fitting for this story.
True,
Lots
true.
of screeching. Yes, indeed.
As compared to when I was first getting used to coming on Twitch as a viewer, I would log on and be like, "Why can't I hear anything?" Because it starts on mute. It's supposed to start on mute by default. So I would be like, "What's wrong with my computer? Why can't I hear the streamer?"
Well, maybe if they're on their individual page, apparently, not when you're on the home page. Jesus H.
I don't think I've ever been to the homepage.
Good. Don't
Well,
avoid
I
it at
won't
all
say
costs if you can.
I won't say
Holy
ever.
cow.
Like maybe like when I was making an account in the first place.
My
Yeah,
word.
I think sometimes it's muted by default, but sometimes it's only because I have the tab muted that I don't hear anything.
Oh, also, I didn't originally have the title card. The title card is up now. Technical.
Yeah, once I'm past my own busy shit and thesis and conference issues, I will go back to editing openings. I just have not done so since like the start of the summer. Which part of that was technical problems, but part of that was life problems.
Also, I'd like to say I actually have a bit of time this week. If y'all have any particular footage you want me to do for a main opening, I can actually probably put that together this week.
Okay.
I only work Thursday, and that's the rest of my week.
I'm gonna forget by morning. If you tag us in the group chat, that would be good.
Okay. I'll do that after the stream. Actually, I should probably do it first thing in the morning.
Yeah, that'd be great. So for those who don't know what I'm talking about, if you're not huge, when I mentioned Legacy of the Crystal, Final Fantasy Union, one of the main Final Fantasy channels on YouTube, their co-creator and main speaker Daryl James, put together a book which is basically a history of kind of every game, including mobile games, published under the Final Fantasy title, as well as profiles, basically. Well, they're kind of like autobiographical, so it's just kind of like self introductions by major Final Fantasy content creators, like streamers, YouTubers, and so forth, about what drew them to Final Fantasy. So, look forward to taking a look at this over the next few days. Anybody else have anything interesting going on?
I'm probably. Go ahead.
I sort of almost brought it up before we started streaming, but there is a possibility that I might finally have full-time hours in the next week or two, depending on how things go. At the very least, possibly the next month.
Okay.
Because I will be, someone at work left, And it's funny because it ended up being the person who had complained that I apparently wasn't doing enough up in the food court, even though at that point was when my shoulder was playing up. So I could do bugger all. It's like I should have just been happy that I was up there, but she left, and the exact days she worked were the exact days that I was looking for with the exact days off. So
Oh,
Tuesday, Wednesday
nice.
off, working Thursday through Monday. So given that they were still looking for someone to fill that permanently, and it was at least 8 till 4, I thought, this something like this is not going to fall in my lap again anytime
Right.
soon. So I just like put my hand up for it. Um, because like I have a decent reputation at work, so
Mm-hmm.
it is likely that they would potentially give it to me. But even if
Nice.
basically, seemingly they're going to be rearranging the roster anyway, so
Of
I basically
course.
just told them like, so long as it's um like either one of those 6 till 2, 1:30 till 9, or that 8 till 4. Like, so long as it's those specific days with those specific days off, I'm okay with it. Like, I just desperately need full time work at this point. So, you know, like, just get on that. Like, initially they almost kind of went, oh well, do you want to work like a sort of into the night? It might have been like a 1:30 till 9 shift or something. On Mondays instead. And I was basically just like, if it's not going to be a full time roster, then no. I'll just stick with what I've got. Because I don't want to be doing like 11 a.m. starts 3 days in a row, and then it comes around to Monday, and then I've got to work into the night. Like, that's not going to help.
Mm-hmm.
I need consistent start times.
Kind of the reason why I like the current job, among many other things, is that it's either late morning or very early afternoon, and it's between like 4 and 6 hours, depending.
Speaking of money, I actually realized something. So I was looking at my former apartment complex because they were supposed to be, I wanted to see like if they were giving back my whole security deposit or, if at what point they were giving me back the overpayment on rent because I had paid for August before I realized I wasn't going to be allowed to live there in August. Um, and according to the paperwork, they cut me a check for $3,000, including, both of those two things. But I'm pretty sure they don't have my address. So I need to
Hmm.
call them and be like, yeah, you can send it to me. I don't know why they didn't just do direct deposit, considering that I pay through electronic, e-check every month, or paid through e-check. But I'm
I
fine getting a
do.
paper check as long as I actually get it.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if they can reverse that or not. I'm not sure how much info they're allowed to get on
Hmm.
hand through something like that.
Yeah, it's possible that's it. Or maybe, I mean,
It might be the
it would be
program
nice if
itself
there was
gets
a
most
form
of it.
I could have just filled out to give them the information, but
Right.
I'm not sending my routing number through an email.
No. Um, I guess of all that, this week has been like I've just previously mentioned, it's gonna be a small week, but I've had a couple of small weeks, then preceded by like really big weeks the next week. So I'm not entirely freaking out right now about work when it comes to that because they've been pretty even keel on that. Any kind of shortage for reaching at least bare minimum 20 hours a week, then usually the next week will make up for. So it's been pretty even keel on that. Also waiting to see how much I'll be making because I should be getting that end of the month trial run boost sometime soon here. It might be this paycheck, I believe, or if not for sure, the next one. Ow. I will also say I've been my foot's really tender right now, and it's because I've been drinking too much dang Mountain Dew again.
Mm.
On the plus side, tomorrow will be my last can of this stuff. The new Baja Blast flavors are really good, but man, I do not care for these feet cramps. Oh, also, I had nachos from work today. Nachos at work because it's Taco Tuesday. They do all kinds of Mexican-esque stuff. They have tacos, I don't think they have burritos, but they have like a couple different versions of tacos and a couple different versions of nachos. I decided to go with the nachos, which tortilla chips, meat. They have both beef and chicken options.
Hmm.
Nacho cheese, and then whatever extra toppings you want on top. I went with more shred, some jalapenos, and a little bit of taco sauce. So it's a taco burrito, or nacho burrito. A nacho taco, if I could get the right names of the right things in the right order.
Oh, they had nacho tacos on Kim Possible. They were called nachos.
Okay. Never watched this show, so I had no idea.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, nacho taco. That was my dinner tonight, and it was pretty good. Other than the fact that about 3 or 4 hours later, I felt like I could go for another snack. A little more of it next time, maybe. I got one of the shirts for the costumes I'm working on, and that's going to be the only improvement I need. It's for my Jason costume. I got a shirt that says, I Hockey Mask Mom. It's a very detailed hockey mask with some scratches and cracks on it.
I was gonna say, does it have the X
Oh,
mark
it does
or
not have like the X mark on along one side. No,
Ah.
it's a weathered but still in one piece mask, which is pretty much the mask I wear too. So it works. I believe, yeah, I'm planning on a couple of other upgrades for a different costume. I'm also thinking that the Wednesday night group, I'm going to be poking them about addresses because I plan to get them some Halloween stuff since we've been basically doing the ghost game constantly since the passing of Randy. And he was really big on keeping that going on Wednesday nights. But yeah, I made my own, like, I originally went out to start making like a logo for the game that we play the most frequently, which is Ghost Exorcism Inc. But ended up getting frustrated when it wasn't looking quite the way I wanted it to for a logo for like tile cards and stuff. So I just decided to completely re-alter it myself, keep a couple of the color schemes from one of the variants that I saw that they had, which I don't think they use anymore, and just made my own little like angry ghost logo thing, and then put a big like spray painted looking X through it, and so it's basically been dubbed the No Evil Spirits logo. So it's my own knockoff of Ghostbusters logo is what it ended up being, and I have it on merch now. So I'm planning to buy shirts for the group, and I'm also planning on getting a hoodie for my Malice costume. So that'll be one of the big updates, as well as new glowing eyes, because I want to get those LED eyes from that one guy I see on Etsy.
Was that during the podcast we talked about the glowing eyes, or was that off?
I can't remember if it was on or off, but it was. I did mention them last week, I believe.
Yeah, I think that came up in the opening banter last time.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I do remember us talking about it. I just don't remember when or where. I just remember it was like last week at some point. But yeah, I plan to get those eyes, and I want to get all the other stuff put away first, and then I can get those eyes, and they'll be here in a couple weeks. So I'm not worried about their delivery time. I'm more worried about the other stuff, which is why I want to get addresses so I can get stuff sent out as soon as possible after tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to think. Oh, I keep bumping into people, like literally people who left the gas station before I did, as well as people that are still there, and frequent people who go there more often than over by the grocery store. And they're like, "Oh wait, you work here now?" I'm like, "Have been for over a month."
All
But
right, that sounds
yeah.
like a good point to move on to tonight's show.
Hmm.
So we've got a little bit of birthdays and news, a little bit of geek talk, and then we have our episode summary, review, final thoughts, and ratings. Starting with the birthdays.
Yep. So, on the 7th of September, we have Toby Jones, who is the Dream Lord in Amy's Choice, and is better known as Arnim Zola in the MCU, turned 57. On the 9th, we've got a few. First up, we have Julia Sawala, who played Emma in The Curse of Fatal Death, and
Technically a companion actress.
right, yeah,
Hmm.
and would probably be better known to people, at least in the UK and Australia, as being in Absolutely Fabulous. I'm blanking on the character's name, but in any case, she turned 55. As well, fittingly enough, we have Hugh Grant, also on the 9th, played the 12th Doctor in Curse of Fatal Death, turned 63. Bloody hell. Didn't realize he was getting up there that much, but I guess makes sense. And finally, also on the 9th, we have Janet Fielding, who played Tegan from 1981 to 84, and again in The Power of the Doctor in 2022, and also probably a ton of Big Finish as well.
Oh yeah.
Turned 70. So happy birthday to Toby, Julia, Hugh, and Janet.
All right, moving on to our news. The first bit of news we have is that Doctor Who Redacted is coming out for Series 2. Now, Doctor Who Redacted was sort of an audio series, or is also being referred to as a podcast through BBC Sounds, which is the BBC's free podcasting app. And I still haven't listened to Series 1, even though I said I would. But the news is that the second series will be out on September 18th. Juno Dawson returns as the lead writer. Uh, I know there was some criticism of somebody not returning. I don't know if it was originally Juno Dawson or if it was the producer or somebody. But one of the co-creators had originally expressed surprise at not returning. Um, but according to this news, the lead writer is returning, so that's definitely a plus on that front.
Mm-hmm.
Alongside returning stars Charlie Craggs, Lois Chimimba, and Holly Quinn Ankra. And it also includes other guest stars from Doctor Who, including, well, the only name I immediately recognize is Anjali Mohindra. There's also Freddie Carter, Dervla Kirwan, and Alexander Armstrong. I'm pretty sure one of those is an anime character. Um, but yeah, so if you're interested in free audio things, then this might be something of interest to listen to. Uh, I'll add Redacted Series 1 to my list of things to find time to do before getting on to Series 2, which will be out by the time we next podcast. I'm guessing nobody here has listened to it yet, right? Because that was mainly the one that was going to.
No.
Not yet, no.
Mm-mm.
And our only other piece of news comes to us from Big Finish. The latest entry to the Once and Future series is out. with The Martian Invasion of Planetoid 50, written by Jonathan Barnes and starring David Tennant and Michelle Gomez, as well as the entire Paternoster gang. So, a whole bunch of anachronisms, which I think is part of the point of this whole series. And that is it for our news. Like I said, very sparse today.
No.
I guess I will chime in quickly with apparently it was the person who seemingly either created or was generally a producer on it that was dropped apparently without explanation.
Yeah, the producer of Redacted Series 1.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think the whole series was her idea, if I remember the controversy right. Which that was a few months ago. I'm guessing that was before the actual date was announced. Yeah, still not sure what exactly is going on with that. But moving on to Geek Talk. So I recently was, doing my shopping as I do once student loans hit. And I realized that Teen Titans Robin had been out for a few months, but I had just been broke when it came out and not bought it. So the Teen Titans series in question is that written by Garcia and with art by Gabriel Picolo, and is being released in kind of trade paperback format instead of monthly comic format, and is sort of it's a I don't want to say Ultimates universe because the Ultimates universe was largely terribly handled. But it's that sort of thing. Just like it's almost like a show in comic format, right? It's loosely adapting the Teen Titans based on the characters that we know, rather than trying to follow on from 50 years of continuity. So the first book, the earlier books in the series were Raven, Beast Boy, and then Beast Boy Loves Raven, which was just kind of a continuation of both of their stories, plus kind of leaning into the fact that the artist did fan art and had a lot of shippers enjoy fan art. So it was more a marketing stunt, I think, than anything. But
Yeah.
Robin continues on from that. So Damian had joined the team in book 3. But actually, Teen Titans Robin actually focuses on both Damian and Dick. So it looks like in this universe, we're basically following on that, Dick had been fully adopted by Bruce, and then Damian came, kind of in line with his actual comic origin. No mention of Jason, Tim, or Steph, or even Barbara yet that I've seen. But so they're dealing with the fact of one, Dick wanting to get to know Damian, and Damian, having a huge chip on his shoulder, which I'm pretty sure is canon already.
No.
What I found to be oddest about that initially was Damian being a founding member of the Teen Titans, which is probably the most AU-y thing about this AU.
Yeah.
Because obviously the Teen Titans were around for decades before before Damian was, which is, decades, but the universe was rebooted multiple times in between then.
Yeah.
So,
continuity, what's that?
Yes. So this is, instead of trying to reboot the universe, this is just more of a side universe. So almost a reboot. But yeah, so a lot of it focused...
To further paraphrase Mystery Science Theater, space is warped and time is bendable.
But a lot of it is focusing on Damian and Dick getting to know each other, and you realize how similar they are, while continuing on the plot of them being on the run from Hive and everything else. It ends with a lead-in to the next person that they may have to go find, who happens to be named Corey Anders. If you're a Teen Titans fan, you know exactly what's going to happen. So this one, it's pretty decently up there. I personally got involved in the series because I wanted to see more of Raven. which you do get to see a little bit more of Raven here, but she's by far not the main character. That
Mm.
said, seeing the interplay between the Robins is interesting. Um, I find it really interesting that as you can see in the cover, Dick just wears a varsity jacket looking thing with a Robin logo on it in his day-to-day public life. I don't know if they're ever going to address that or if they just decided this is not the kind of comic to care about secret identities.
Yeah, that's a lot of.
But I'm hoping eventually we'll reach a point where the entire team is assembled and we'll really see what this story is about, because yes, adding one new character per book is interesting enough, but at a certain point I think it's starting to reach the point where that idea is starting to get stale. Next is going to be book 5, in which they're adding the 6th member. So I'd rather them just kind of settle on a team and start overcoming conflicts rather than introducing new things.
Finish something, dang it! Alrighty. So that's it then?
Yep.
Alright.
I feel like your voice kind of went up and down to the point where I'm not quite sure what that was.
Weird. Alright, so I got a stopwatch ready, so,
Yep.
I guess whenever we're ready.
Yep, and Alex is up with the summary, and they already mentioned taking notes. So.
Mm-hmm. I will say there'll be a thing that I won't mention that I know people will notice, but I'm gonna make a point of that later. As to why.
Alright.
But otherwise,
So,
I should
starting
be-
in
yeah.
3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, we open in 2003 on what seems to be a meteor crashing down to Earth, with the creature inside it killing the 2 people who discover it. The Doctor then arrives, disgruntled to be on Earth again, only to quickly realize something is wrong when he can't seem to find any people on the street at first, and the people in a bar he goes into are no help. Seeming to be determined to figure out what's going on after he witnesses an old homeless woman die for even vaguely trying to explain to him what's happening. The Doctor tracks down Allison, the woman working at the bar he went into, and she explains that the creatures have been there for 3 weeks, killing anyone who tried to be defiant. As a result, some of the creatures come up from out of the ground to kill the Doctor, Allison, and her boyfriend Joe, but the Doctor manages to seemingly kill them to allow the 3 to escape, though he clarifies afterwards that he merely slowed them down. Another 2, or the same ones reconstituted, come after them, which the Doctor decides to make a makeshift bomb to take care of this time, which takes out the house and shop with it. But it is said that to stun the creatures on the ground long enough to finally give them some peace, with townspeople seeming to come out finally, saying what he thinks are his goodbyes until he realizes the TARDIS has been taken by these creatures. Meeting with the unit, the Doctor makes it clear that he wants to just get the TARDIS and leave until he finds out Allison was taken by the creatures. Or just generally that they will not help him unless they're... that they'll only do anything if they're allowed to go with him. But then he ends up tricking the unit soldiers into caving in the tunnel with some grenades when they encounter a creature, allowing him to be taken back to their base. It's here we meet Prime, the leader of this race, which we now find out are called the Shalka, a race the Doctor has never heard of. As the Doctor learns more about the Shalka, who, you guessed it, want to take over the world, Allison is brought forward and they threaten to kill her, forcing the Doctor to work with them and let them into the TARDIS to see how it functions, with the Shalka throwing the Doctor into a device they have that can act as a black hole, hoping to kill him, only for his little phone to somehow become a doorway into the TARDIS to save himself and suck the Shalka that were in the TARDIS into the black hole. Meanwhile, Allison was sent back to the surface by the Shalka, which turns out to be part of a larger plan to have humans under the Shalka's control in strategic positions around the world to scream, which, if not dealt with, will somehow change the Earth's atmosphere to be more suited to the Shalka and kill everything else. Having removed the tiny Shalka from Allison's head earlier, the Doctor and Allison go back to the Shalka's base and confront Prime, eventually tricking them into knocking the Doctor over to the control panel to turn the wormhole into a black hole again, sucking Prime in, with the Doctor barely escaping being sucked into it again. The Doctor then tries to have Allison make the humans under Shalka control fight back by putting the little Shalka that he had taken out of her head, swallowed, and then regurgitated back into her head. But when that doesn't work, the Doctor speaks into what's basically a Shalka microphone and sings a note he earlier used to destroy some Shalka to wipe them all out in one fell swoop, including the ones inside humans. Allison and Joe reunite, but Allison makes it clear she wants to travel with the Doctor, and the two mutually part ways, and we end on the Doctor and Allison getting into the TARDIS and taking off. The end.
All right, 4 minutes, 13 seconds.
I'm kind of like, there was a point where I got to where I was like, I need to summarize this a bit more, because this feels like it like, if I kept going the way I was probably going to be like 6 minutes or something.
The back and forth, the back and forth.
All right, so that moves us on to what we liked about the episode, and this was is starting with Alex again.
Go with the design of the Shalka. Like, yeah, this is very cheap Flash animation, but honestly, I mean, it's one of those funny things where, like, non-humans usually end up looking a lot better in this kind of cheap animation. They look like they've generally got more detail to them, but it's generally an interesting design, and like, arguably a design that probably wouldn't be extremely difficult to recreate in live action if they ever decided to do something canonical with these things again.
To be honest, I think they probably could if they want to, because I've seen something that looks extremely like the Shalka.
The part about them popping would probably be the hardest part.
And
where you sing to them and they pop open and lava comes out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can do half of that like in digital, but my thought is as well. Of course, you can do this in costume. There's this character called Pilot from another franchise called Farscape. Very much looks like the Shalka, but much friendlier.
And also, I guess that said, at least at the moment, they've got Disney pumping money into the production to let it be on Disney Plus. So,
is it gonna be on Disney Plus?
Yeah,
it's moving forward. Doctor Who's going to be on Disney Plus. I don't know if any of they've only said that it's like Series 14 and like to whenever the deal falls through, I guess, potentially. But there's no talks of like if older New Who stuff or if classics gonna end up on there at all. Probably not.
Probably not. Most likely, it's whatever deal they got with this current series and forward.
Yeah, I mean, like, the one that would be like absolutely have to be CGI or would have to just be scaled down or like shot in a way where it's more like maybe a miniature that they just try to shoot in a way that makes it look gigantic would be Prime's like larger form.
Yeah,
Um,
that and the
but
weird
other than
giant
that,
tunneler thing would have to be the two that you
yeah,
really couldn't do
yeah,
practically, at least not normally.
yeah. That would either have to be like a similar
The,
thing where it's either like
Mhm.
it would either have to be completely CG or it would have to be like
a very detailed miniature shot in a way that you
yeah,
can still use it. Yeah.
And the
yeah.
little ones that get planted in people's forehead would probably be a mixture of prosthetics and CGI.
Mm,
You could probably actually do almost all that prosthetic these days. It takes one little tiny
yeah.
gizmo with a freaking watch battery, and you
Mm,
got something that wiggles on somebody's forehead,
mm,
and that would include the LED light. You just have to
mm,
add the sound effect in post.
mm. And the funny thing is even in this animation, when they're actually in someone's forehead, they don't seem to really move. They just emit light.
Mm-hmm.
So that would actually be pretty easy to do. It's more the act of like taking it out and look like it's being removed from the forehead that would probably be a bit tricky.
And
So
even
they'd
then,
either
even
just
in this
not
animation,
show
they
that.
looked away from most of that. So it's
Mm,
honestly something that you, especially in a air quotes family show, it would be something that you wouldn't show on screen.
mm,
You just have to have the prosthetic removed and whatever
yeah.
wiggly bit in the other character's hand. So yeah.
Mm,
Or make it like the other prosthetics, just that it's a removed bit and they paint up the other end.
mm. Yeah, that's all I've got for that, I think.
Yeah.
So next is Matt.
Overall, general thing that I liked. Honestly, once again, this is very much a standalone thing. This is no longer the Ninth Doctor. But that being said, I have to say this is a pretty good contender for being a close to canon, non-canon Doctor. Like he's obviously there's obviously something that's gone on off camera between classic and when this takes place.
Yeah, maybe there was some sort of war with the Time Lords. We'd
He's
never get that.
obviously having some sort of really nasty infight with the Time Lords, and they are like
Hmm.
forcing him to do stuff now, and that's made him a very bitter Doctor again. But
Mm,
that being said, he still can't help himself but to actually keep doing things to help others when the time arises, which is a natural Doctor thing to do. So very much like something closer to like the first Doctor, even more so than Capaldi was.
mm. Or like,
It's funny you say the first Doctor because I was seeing more notes of second and sixth than him. Especially the
yeah.
way they would like yell at the time. They'd be like, "Why am I here? Damn it, Time Lords!"
Well, that's because they never developed the Time Lords during the first run. If they
Hmm.
would have had that
I mean,
developed by then, I guarantee you he'd give
mm,
them a piece of his mind too.
mm. I mean, I'd say that it's more like a combo of 3 and 6, rather than 2. Given that he's very like bumping heads with unit and all that.
Oh yeah, the bump your heads with
Um,
you and two is definitely a 3 thing.
Hmm.
mm. But yeah, I definitely got like maybe what they intended 6 to be rather than what they actually wrote him as.
I
Or
guess,
like
kind of, sort
what
of.
Big Finish would have managed. Because it's
Yeah,
like
what
the
Big
idea
Finish
is
has
he's
managed to do
trying.
now, yeah.
Yeah, because it's one of those things of like with 6 they were trying to like do 1 again with the idea of like starts off very cold and harsh and then softens up, but they just never got the chance to do it, and they just kind of went too far too quickly. um Whereas this is like, yeah, he's being an asshole in some scenarios, but like it's not like overwhelming,
Hmm. It's almost on
and
the
like he's
borderline
still,
some moments, but he never crosses that
mm,
Hmm.
line.
yeah,
And it's also, even though it's pretty clear intended to be the first story of several. He ends it up with apologizing and whatever else. He's like, yeah, I've been a dick.
yeah,
Once he gets exposed to a human woman, it's like they trigger something in his brain to make him less of a dick.
I guess even yeah, like if we go by like something I think it's come up more in New Who than it ever did in Classic, but it's a matter of like sort of the moderating influence of humanity kind of a thing. That like he's clearly been traveling alone, or at least not with humans for a while, so he hasn't had that sort of angel on his shoulder kind of deal telling him, "Hey, maybe don't be a."
Yeah, if
Yeah, the
nothing else,
master
he's
is
had
very
a.
much not an angel on his
I
shoulder.
was about to say, I'm pretty sure he's had more of a devil whispering at his back.
Hmm.
Which it would have been fascinating to eventually get the explanation of why there's a robot master in the TARDIS.
Well, they do seem to drop some pretty heavy hints that this was his choice to become a robot or a cyborg of some kind.
So we had uh
The Shalka and the Doctor.
we had the that's okay, yes, the Shalka, and well, I thought it was that the I thought you said it was that the story was a passable canonish
He was a pass. I
attempt.
said he was a passable canonish Doctor.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant like the way the story was written, the fact that they weren't Jedi-ish and all of that.
I was hinting more towards the Doctor himself being very much, which is why
Okay.
the conversation went the way it went towards the end.
So
there was
mine,
talking about him not being a dick.
I think mine is different enough from yours that I can still go with it because I wanted to talk about the acting. Um,
General, yeah.
for a one-off, animated story with a new Doctor, it could have been super hit or miss. I don't think that Stephen Fry as the minister would have been a very good Doctor. He was a complete, I mean, obviously he was playing a completely different character, but I would probably not have liked him as the Doctor. He's a little different. But these, the Doctor and Master, especially that we got here, were perfect. I mean, for a second, my brain was just like, is that Roger Delgado? No, it's not. It's very much not. But damn, if it wasn't close for Derek Jacobi's Master and
Yeah.
Richard E. Grant's Doctor as well. It's just like he kind of was. It was uncanny how doctory he felt without ever having been a doctor that we've seen, in other contexts. I think Big Finish used him after the fact, but
Yeah, I think he's
yeah,
been a part of a couple other things since.
mhm. But as a new doctor, it was very much, very well acted. Which again, I don't know if either of these two have done professional voice acting before this. Obviously, they were well accomplished on stage and on screen, but I'm not entirely sure about voice, which is a very different animal. But they knocked it out of the park.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if, with how things are in the UK, if they'd both done like radio plays.
That's
Oh,
true.
maybe,
That's true.
yeah.
But yeah, Derek Jacobi's thing of the master in this was very interesting in the sense that it did kind of sound like he was going for a straight up Delgado impression.
Mm-hmm.
To the point that I was like, is that Derek Jacobi? Because I'm so used to how he sounds in Utopia that I'm just like, what? It's like he's definitely going for an impression in this one.
Yeah, it's a very different
definitely
voice for sure.
Yeah, he was definitely trying to follow in line with previous masters. He was almost even ready to do the whole "and you will." Oh, hello, Doctor.
All right, what we disliked about the episode, starting with Alex.
There is one thing that would sort of bug me, but I'm gonna leave that because I'll bring it up if no one else does, but I'll go with the other thing, which is we talked about in since that that the master is in this. I left him entirely out of my summary because he was completely superfluous. He's just
He was a time
there,
filler. Yeah.
and it feels very. Why? Now I get the idea is like, this is not intended to be a one-off. They would have done stuff with it, but it's
He was
such a
protecting the
bizarre.
TARDIS or
Yeah,
possibly handing it over to the Shalka. It's not entirely
yeah,
clear which.
yeah. It's just very like. It's such a weird thing to drop. So, like in what was supposed to be like the first story of a continuing Ninth Doctor adventures that never happened. And it's just like, I mean, I even had to read the friggin' Wikipedia summary of this to realize that, oh, so this is technically the Master's consciousness put inside of an android or whatever. Which, given how the Master's wonkiness has been in these past things, is like, okay, I can kind of believe that that's possible in Doctor Who, but also like, why? Like when he first shows up, I was very confused because I just thought, wait, is this the Master's TARDIS and he's just made it look like the police box? And it's like, no, no, no. And then they bring up that, and it's very like, what? Like knowing the Master was in this, and I feel like even if I hadn't known that the Master was in this, that would have felt very underwhelming that he just kind of shows up to effectively be like a third string companion. And it's just like, why? What was the point of him being here at all? Like the performance is good, but it's just like he's completely superfluous to everything that's going on. Like literally all he did was
to be fair, if this was pre-planned to actually be a one and done, I can definitely see them completely cutting him out.
Yeah, like it's, and the funny thing is like no one likes Chameleon, but you could have brought Chameleon in to do that same thing. Even though he was destroyed, whatever, who cares? You can build a new
gone.
one.
It's destroyed. It's done for.
Yeah. But it's like that could have been like anything. I mean, bloody hell, this is the second story in a row. Yeah, like as Bill alluded to, it's like the second story in a row where we've had like an android companion. And in both cases, it's been completely like the fact that they are that is just so like, and ultimately what they do in the story is so superfluous that you could have had any character there that it's like, why were they there? It's like a very weird. Did they just have like a bug up their ass about we need another android companion? Yeah, Chameleon didn't work, but this is audio and animation, so we can really get away with it. And it's just, I don't know. Like maybe it could have gone somewhere, and maybe Big Finish did something with it if they decided to like make this Doctor an Unbound Doctor or something. But like, I don't know. It's just it amounts to ultimately nothing, despite the fact that Derek Jacobi is doing good with what he's got, and it's just, I don't know. You really could have just not had him in here.
I just tried looking up the story notes to see if there was anything on record about like the Master storyline, and it doesn't look like there's been any interviews or anything about him. So it's entirely up to interpretation.
Honestly,
although it did remind me, I did earlier say this was Richard E. Grant's first time playing the Doctor. He played a comedy doctor in Curse of Fatal Death, but I don't think you would consider them the same character.
Yeah.
No.
Well, funnily enough, if I remember right, he was effectively dressed like what the Ninth Doctor would end up being dressed like. So.
All right, so on to Matt.
Yeah, I don't have any particular hate on the Master outside of the fact that, if this was pre-planned to be a one-shot, that obviously he would have been probably the first thing to go to make time for other things. General overall thing I didn't like. Honestly, the way they wrote the unit guys, I really off the bat didn't like them / trust them. So I'm honestly kind of seeing where the doctor's coming from on that one. It's like, oh god, everyone wants to see the gosh darn time machine. Everyone wants to have a look on the inside. Everyone wants to yada yada yada. And when I can't even get it on my own, I need to be followed by a group of Boy Scouts. Great, fantastic. Boy Scouts with guns. This is going to go splendidly.
Yeah, like
I
I,
will
c- I
say
can.
by the end they kind of redeemed themselves, especially making the one
Mm,
soldier into a bit of a joke. But at the
mm,
very first, I'm like, yeah, I don't trust these guys. I don't trust these guys at all.
yeah,
Kind of undermined what they were supposed to be there for. To be honest,
yeah,
gave
like.
me conflicting ideas of what to expect from them, and what they were actually there for.
Mm, like I can like the Doctor not getting along with him fair. He didn't always
Mm-hmm.
get along with the Brigadier and that, but it's like
It's
the silly
super
stuff of just
shady.
like, ooh, we're going with you so I can see the TARDIS.
I,
It's very like, what?
so I know he mentioned like, oh, I get to see the TARDIS, but I thought that was I always understood that to be secondary. It's like, no, we're bringing you we're
Mm,
working with you because you're our best
mm,
chance at stopping this alien invasion, and as an added bonus, I get to see the TARDIS, which I've only read about. Which I mean, part of that went into the whole like the Doctor being a borderline dick because he was like, oh yeah. I don't give a shit about the Earth being invaded and possibly destroyed by aliens until eventually, fine, I get the bug out of my ass and help. But he was okay. So actually, yeah, that kind of connects to some of the first Doctor comparisons because the first Doctor is really the only one that would be like, oh, the Earth being invaded, not my business, and then even he eventually turned around on
There's
that.
always something that turns them
mm,
around. Yeah, it
Mhm.
took a little time for the first Doctor, and it did take this one a little bit of time too.
mm,
But yeah, the way they, I don't know if it's the way the actor portrayed it or if it's the way the role was written. But that for a reason, that leader from Unit just kind of brushed me off as something's up or something's wrong for the first like
mm,
half or so.
This is kind of nothing, but there were times, and I don't know if this is because that's just how you play a military officer in British film, or if he was actually trying to do like a Lethbridge Stewart impression.
Mm.
But there were times when it sounded like he was trying to do a Lethbridge Stewart impression.
I can kind of see where you're coming from, but I think it might just be the way they're written or the way they're acted.
Yeah, that is
yeah,
just the way that the commanding officers played in traditional British
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
training.
pretty much. Yeah. Um. Yeah, it is one. The I guess connected to that, it's also just weird that the Brigadier is never mentioned. Like, yeah, he would have been retired by now
Mm-hmm.
in story and whatever, but it's just so weird that like that either it wasn't just flat out written to be like, oh well, we brought the Brigadier out of retirement because he's used to this shit or something like that.
Well, that's kind of the point of this
Yeah.
unit, anyways, is to be able to handle this kind of thing.
Hmm.
Hmm. But it's funny that it's like just no even passing mention of like even if like he's not getting along with this guy to like just be like, "Ugh, I prefer dealing with the Brigadier."
You're more
Hmm.
insufferable than
That
the
is.
Lethbridge Stewart. Starts walking out.
All right, so
So,
that was okay. So
Man.
yeah, so we had dislike
this
the master, dislike unit. And then that's on to me, and I'm going to
Mhm.
say I wasn't a fan of the boyfriend. It's just
Oh,
some sometimes he was actively annoying in the sense of just like, okay, like you're repeating yourself too much, and sometimes it was just like, okay, you're just bogging down the plot and just
Mm.
not being
I'm
helpful.
yeah, like there wasn't much point of him.
Mm-hmm.
Like he
Mm.
didn't even like there wasn't even a situation where like the relationship between the boyfriend and Allison was important to the story that I can think of, other than the fact that they never saw eye to eye on anything.
I
Oh,
mean,
you're
like, yeah, he exists to basically be like something that's tethering Allison to Earth,
hmm
and then in the end, they both realize they're probably better off breaking up,
I just
and then they
but
realized
they
just
don't
leave.
something.
break up.
They
Oh.
don't technically break up. She's just
I
leaving,
mean,
but
I think
he's
they effectively do. Like, it's not outright stated, but it's one of the. It's more implied that
yeah. It
they
seems to be
have
very
like
heavily
realized.
implied, at least from it seems like the guy's
Yeah.
side that he's just kind of done with all of it.
Mm.
Although, yeah, on
So
the tethering thing, it's interesting. Like he's got his job as I want to say he was a surgeon, but I might be wrong about that.
I
he,
believe it was,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I forget
But
exactly what, but just generally a doctor.
whereas I guess she dropped out of college so that she could stay with him, it sounded like.
Mm-hmm. But she
Um,
Mm.
she never followed her career path when she was done in college because she wanted to
right,
stay with
right.
him.
And it's I could just imagine like the Ben Shapiro's being like, "Oh my God, this is so anti-men. They made the man the enemy who ruined her life, and then she dumped him."
Mm.
But I guess it's probably not too uncommon of a real life story, unfortunately. But yeah, and either way, it's just he didn't feel like he added anything of interest to the story, and there were times when it actively seemed like he just slowed it down and made it less enjoyable.
I, by the way, I just happened to think of this just a few moments ago. I just realized this. I think this guy is like a discount Mickey.
Kind of,
Hon-
He's a
Honestly, he
discount store
gets a better.
Mickey. He's like Mickey but worse.
except Mickey. Like I think the idea more was like I don't think Mickey like had anything for himself, and he just kind of like latched onto the people around him until he eventually found himself. Whereas
Basically,
this guy, like he
at least
actually
Mickey
had.
had potential. This guy just like,
Mhm.
ugh.
This is kind of the opposite, where it's like he has the career and seems more like he's pulling Allison down than just following her along.
Yeah, honestly, I prefer this to Mickey Rose because Rose just flat out abandons
Yeah,
True.
Mickey. This
with
this at least we have a conversation where he lets her go.
I think that was my least favorite scene when we reviewed Rose. It was like, oh, my boyfriend is injured on the floor, but time machine, I'm going to run and not even check if my boyfriend is okay.
Well, he wasn't injured, but yeah, he's freaking out, and she's like, I don't care, bye bye, time machine, whoosh. So yeah,
And I guess the
Uh,
funny thing is that actually transitions pretty well
your favorite
uh,
scene?
into favorite scenes because it is so much the antithesis of the Mickey Rose bit. I actually really enjoyed the fact that like they're not even like at each other's throats throughout the story. They're just like it's very clear that they've hit a point in their relationship and they've probably been together for years. Like that they finally hit that point of like she wants to get out and see the world and he's fine where he is. So the fact that they have that moment at the end where it's like, oh, and then like there's that moment of like, oh, she's probably already back already. Technically, it's a time machine. Call her mom, and it's like, oh, you aren't there. So it's like, oh, so clearly she either travels with him and something bad happens, or she just never comes back to him. And
Or it being
it,
the doctor, he's off by 6 months.
yeah, like, but it was a hell of a lot more maturely handled than Rose Mickey, because it's just flat out, oh, you're probably not coming back, or at least, not now and whatever. And they've been sort of arguing. She's been saying to the doctor that she doesn't like. It's not so far as like that she's saying like, oh, we need to split up or whatever, but like the doctor gets the vibe of, what, are you gonna break up with him or something?
She's
And the doctor
unhappy. She's
wants
unhappy in her situation, and
Yeah.
part of that situation is the boyfriend. So it's not
Yeah.
cause and effect, but something needs to change.
Yeah. And like the doctor takes no uh pleasure in them splitting up, because he actively even had the moment earlier where he like says that they need to have a serious talk.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's like the fact that this is just they part ways, they're still on good terms, and she leaves is like, my god, it took long enough, but it's like this happened before that, and yet they couldn't just go, hey, let's do that, sort of, but tweak it somewhat. Instead, we have to have Rose just running off, fuck Mickey, and when she gets back, it's like, oh, you were in trouble with the cops because you're a black guy and I'm your white blonde girlfriend who went missing for 6 months. Who cares?
Well, also her
Like,
mom blamed him, but yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like, I'll take this over that any day if we're not just gonna get the, like, Amy Rory thing of just they both go.
No.
Okay, Matt.
So general scene I liked two things in one basically. So ending the Shalka. First, you got the main leader who's basically in control of the hive mind. We do a Chekhov's gun and shoot that thing into a black hole essentially, and then close it. So that's done and done. But then the threat on the surface is still ongoing. So the little callbacks to the doctor trying to tone his voice so he can get the right pitch, the entire like last half of the episode or last quarter of the episode, finally pays off as he just basically shouts them all into oblivion. And I believe there was
Okay,
some
so
sort of musical reference at the
sonic
end too.
warfare.
Mm-hmm. As I was saying, that I believe he also gets off some sort of musical reference at the end, and is like, "Oh yeah, basically I win."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair. There's nothing else to say about it.
Yeah.
My favorite scene then. This is why I like when there's things to say about it. It's like even if I had thought about it like and specifically known what I wanted to say 20 minutes ago, I wouldn't have remembered it until now. Favorite scene. I mean, I guess I'm gonna go with the one of the doctor being, "Oh, how's your throat? Oh yeah, I think I'm getting laryngitis. Oh, okay. You stay here, and I'm just going to. I don't know. I'm too lazy to come up with an excuse right now. It was just like it was so. It was one of those where like the audience is in on the joke, the doctor is in on the joke. It's only this one guy
The
who's
one
not in
soldier,
on the
yeah.
joke. Technically, even the Shalka was kind of in on the joke.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna go do something eclectic. Wanders
Right.
off.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was it was not especially deep or anything, but it was definitely a fun moment. That one of those ones where you're just like, yes, I am a genre savvy Doctor Who fan, and you are a lowly one off character.
Yeah.
All right, least favorite scenes.
Mm.
Um, I think like I bothered to actually think about it more on the second time through. Um, but the Doctor setting off that makeshift bomb that blows up that store and uh, Allison and Joe's house. Because I'm thinking, okay, but with where this is, there would have been a house next to that as well that we don't see that people were probably still in.
Yeah, oh yeah, house in the
So
other direction. Yeah, that
they
would have
were
also gotten blown
probably
up. So
still,
that was like
yeah,
3 buildings that got blown up.
yeah, that probably still had people inside it for all we know. I
Unless
mean, like
unless they happen to be
maybe,
gone already for some reason.
yeah,
But
like
it's
unless,
very likely due to the fact that most of the town had people hiding. Yeah.
hmm. And like houses across the street all had people in them, so it's like it would have been like very simple to have the Doctor have a throwaway question of just, are there people in the building next door? No? Good. Like, before coming up with the I'm going to blow them the hell up thing. Because there's no, like, oh no, there were people in that other place next to the next to the shop. It's just, no, we set off a massive explosion that takes out that entire building, seemingly. Like, maybe it was just those isolated from everything else just to get around that, but I don't think we see the whole thing to the left. So it could keep going as a building,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, yeah, that probably resulted in someone dying. But we're just choosing to ignore it. And again, all I needed was a throwaway line, or a better shot of those buildings that made it clear that these were very isolated, so that when that explosion goes off, yeah, debris gonna fly everywhere, but everyone's inside anyway, like cowering and shit. So no one's gonna be near an open window.
hmm
Well, there's not gonna be any open windows, but like if bricks go flying through a window, it's unlikely to hit someone. So like, fair enough, but there's we don't get enough info, so that's where my brain went to is, oh, there were probably civilian casualties in that.
Okay, so we've got blowing up building. How about Matt?
Oh gosh, I thought I had one and it slipped my brain while listening. Try to think. Least favorite scene. Um. Oh, I remember now. Okay, so they get back in the TARDIS. They head back down to the Shalka. They let themselves out, and the Shalka leader doesn't immediately murder the F out of them and ties them up to a chain to a stalagmite. What?
Yeah.
Out of all the lame brain things that a lead villain could do, even the master's sitting in the TARDIS going, "You're an idiot." Just, what are you doing? You're literally leaving
Yeah.
them in the room even for them to mess up your stuff.
Mm.
How?
Yeah.
You
I
just
feel
Like,
like that's every like any Doctor, maybe not every, but any Doctor Who
mm.
story.
I mean, I feel like at the very least,
at the very
more
least have
human.
guards.
Yeah, like more human villains would have either put them in like a jail cell or have confiscated everything out of their pockets.
They were in a cell earlier. How? Why? What? I literally saw their position the beginning of the next episode and went, so when did we turn into killer clowns from outer space? Because we're not gonna kill the main characters like we should have. Like,
Yeah, like
my that's one of my as funny as killer clowns from outer space is, yada yada yada, evil clowns, scary, woo. They turn everybody into the cotton candy things that eventually turn people into drinks that the clowns apparently live off of. But for whatever reason, when it comes to kidnapping the girlfriend, they put her in a balloon and she doesn't melt. As a matter of fact, they seem to be holding on to her for whatever reason. This is literally the same thing. It's just like, you didn't kill your main enemies that should be obvious targets, especially when they just disabled one of your groups.
yeah, and it's not even like I feel like certain like classic Who stories that would have that kind of a cliffhanger would normally be like, "Ah, yes, and now we're going to kill you," and then like you come back on the start of the next episode and they get out of it somehow, like immediately, like we go back to right where we were and they somehow get away. Like the War Games almost has the Doctor getting shot in by a firing squad, only to be saved because it turns out the guns you heard go off were people shooting at the firing squad that was about to shoot him.
Yeah.
So it's
At
like,
least that makes
there you
sense.
go.
At least they're somehow saved. This is just like, what logic was this to leave them in the same room as all your equipment and not be guarded?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, there's aliens even in the Fourth Doctor era that are looking at this and going, "You're imbeciles."
Now that you talk about like guards and stuff, I'm imagining like they absolutely could have used like had like fake Robomen, like like controlled humans guarding them under their mind control, like. They were mind controlling humans already, so they definitely could have used
The
more humans
Shalka
that way.
themselves are mostly constructs. Just make two more to watch them.
Yeah.
That's all you need.
And
At least then you'd be having a warning system.
Yeah, it's just it's so weird to have a cliffhanger that's just, well, we got the info we needed out of you, time for you to die, and then cut back and they're just tied up somewhere. Like, yeah, we'll get to you later. Like, when you get rid of them now, it's very like, it's very that Austin Powers joke of like, wait, aren't you gonna like watch to make sure they're dead? It's like, no, I'm just gonna turn away and like just assume it all went to plan.
Very similar joke. The live action Flash Gordon movie. The scientist and Baron tied up to the wall. Tell me again of this Houdini man. Yeah, just
so that
absolutely
was
ridiculous. And that was
whose least favorite scene?
My least favorite scene. So it's up to you, Bill.
Okay. So mine, I actually remembered something that I was going to say from what I disliked about the episode. So I'm going to kind of tie it into the scene here. And so the overall thing is that the Shalka's scream can do anything. It can mind control people. It can get rid of the ozone layer. It can put the ozone layer back. And so specifically, I'm going to bring up the first scene where that part of it is brought up. Where it's just like, oh yeah, the scream created this gas that I'm going to spray around because basically the part that immediately followed what I said was my favorite scene earlier, where the Doctor steps out and then comes back and sprays them with gas. And I'm not sure why spraying the Shalka with its own favorite atmosphere did anything, But even more, I'm just like, how the fuck does this scream have the power to of alchemy? Like, that's a little bit
It
much.
seems to be some sort of there's supposed to be some sort of Sonic-esque element to their scream, but they don't really explain it very well.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Sound
Yeah.
waves are not alchemy. I mean, I get we have the joke now of the sonic screwdriver being a magic wand, but here we have before that,
The literal magic
before
scream.
the RTD era, where sonic waves can turn air into things that are not air and bring back the ozone layer.
Yeah. I mean,
Next,
like,
you're gonna tell me that scream can also bring back all the buildings that burned down.
Right, right. Be
yeah.
like, oh yeah, that building we blew up, and anybody who was inside it, they're fine now. We reversed the scream.
Yeah. Um, there was yeah, like related to that, I think like my backup was gonna be like the bit where he's like, "Oh no, the ozone layer's gone," and I'm like, "So wouldn't you just be like immediately fried?" Or like maybe not immediately, but like they get off pretty lightly, considering it's
One
like,
guy
oh, the
gets a
ozone
pretty
layer
bad
is just
tan.
Yeah,
entirely
there
gone.
there should be some at the minimum. Like there should be some people checking into hospital with third-degree sunburns.
Hmm. Yeah, the most we get is like,
Ah, yes, Admirable, I have
yeah.
cancer. Isn't this fantastic? Skin cancer for everybody.
The
As,
scream
as
can reverse it.
Scream could have reversed it. Just saying. So,
Was
yeah,
that a final thought?
I think that we're up to final thoughts then.
Okay. That was an
Oh,
add-on to my least favorite scene.
yeah.
I was just like, okay, so yes, now we're at final thoughts.
Yeah. This was interesting. I think like. I mean, I'll put it this way. I definitely like this better, as a whole than Death Comes to Time. It's shorter, which to a degree helps because the story has to be a lot tighter. That being said, yeah, there's plenty of like this work like very it's magic, we don't have to explain it kind of logic for certain things, or like even as techno babbly as they might try to get, it's like yeah, but it's still ultimately screaming is somehow affecting all of this shit. And it just is a bit ridiculous. And also like, you know, they called it Scream of the Shalka, but whew, I definitely needed to turn the volume down when I was listening to this because oh boy, that like, you know, like Matt was complaining about how Twitch blew out his ears before we started. Like, oh my god, listening to this and getting to the first screams, like the audio was all right, and I think I'd already turned it down once because I realized I had the audio too loud.
Mm.
Then the screams started, and I had to turn my audio down again because they were just like too loud, and I'm like, ah, I can only imagine people who have like very like sensitive hearing on top of that would deal with this story. Um, like this for that this would need like if it was done now, it would probably have to have like a sensory warning in front of it for that sort of stuff. But yeah, like all of the acting was fairly good. Um, you know, I'm glad that Richard E. Grant, even though he never got to be a doctor, was at least able to come back to play a significant role by being the Great Intelligence. Um, you know, and you know, it's kind of funny. Of all the people in this, the only person who basically did what they did in this again was Derek Jacobi coming back to play the Master for one story. Um, which is still a bit of a crime that he was only in that one episode. But we
I
have
mean,
Big Finish now.
Richard E. Grant did become a Big Finish doctor, I believe.
Oh, okay. So is it one of the Unbound ones then?
I think so.
If he's Unbound 9, I have some theories.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if they effectively just retroactively went, well, let's just pull this into the
Right.
Unbound.
Retroactively made Scream of the Shalka his canon.
I might be mixing him up with David Warner.
Maybe. But I think they've...
But I can't find a list of Unbound doctors, at least in an easy place. So
That's an unusual actor to suddenly cross him with, but okay.
They're both British.
Shame.
But yeah, like, with some tweaks, this could have been a lot better. But for what it was, you know, they could have been a lot worse. And again, like, I'm forgiving of the animation as well because, like, you know, Doctor Who was always very low budget, so this being very cheap Flash animation, you know, it was mainly the humans that were a bit but otherwise, pretty much all the stuff revolving around the Shalka looked pretty good. Yeah, I would definitely say that this is still, like, I would honestly say people could probably skip Death Comes to Time unless you're, like, really curious. This, I would say, is worth checking out. But, like, just with the idea in mind that, like with Death Comes to Time, this is supposed to be something that was going to lead to more stuff, but didn't.
Mostly because in this case, at least, the actual franchise took off again.
Although it is kind of funny because if they weren't so cheap, like if the BBC wasn't so cheap, the fact that this was released after they already knew there was going to be like New Who was gonna be a thing, I would have just pumped like a little bit more money in it to tweak it to make it a one-off rather than making it seem like something that would lead somewhere. Like, you could probably still have Allison leaving with the Doctor, and it's just, you know, with the implication that, yeah, they went off and had adventures, whatever, but never getting around to it. Yeah, it was also just kind of funny for David Tennant to just have, like, 2 lines in this whole thing. He goes from that to being the Doctor. It's very funny. But yeah, I would generally say this is still worth watching, but yeah, while it could have been a lot worse, it also could have been a lot better. But I'm satisfied with what we got.
All right, Matt.
That's it for me, yeah.
All right, I'm gonna start off by saying I don't fully agree, actually, with some of the things that were just said. One in particular is I think the animation was extremely well done, especially given its age. Do you remember stuff that came out in 2003 and 2004 in Flash? Not a lot of good stuff. Let me just put it that way.
It was well done for a webcast, but cheap if you were to actually compare it to non-web anime.
Yeah, if you were to compare this to, like, people using Flash for, like, high-end quality made-for-TV stuff, sure, I could see where this maybe starts to fall flat, but even then, I don't even think Flash was used for that until, like, 5-6 years later with, like, My Little Pony and stuff like that. This was pretty high-end, all considering, especially for something that was just going to be stapled onto the web and then forgotten. I will agree that a lot of the voice acting was really well done. Maybe some punching up of the script on the dialogue just a little bit, just a bit. Trying to think what else. I understand that the master is superfluous in this, but that's due to the fact that they decided this wasn't going to continue, but it was originally written as something that was going to continue, and I could see where something interesting could have come out of the master eventually. But as it is, it's just like, oh, he's here, and then nothing. All right. Whoops. Um, Trying to think, what else have we kind of talked about in general? Yeah, the only problem I have is the major plot issue I have is the actual scream of the Shalka, which they very much hand wavy. What its abilities are and how they can do it. They need some better explanation for that, and then I could probably given no cares about that particular part of the plot. But given that they still at least play it pretty serious, I think they did a really good job, especially with the design of the Shalka and the fact that they're a race that kind of just as a hive mind with that somehow takes physical form in magma. Which also smacks of that one creature, now that I think of it, as from Star Trek. I can't remember what they're called.
The Horta, I believe.
Um,
That could have been another potential bump. I'm a doctor, not a bricklayer.
Trying to think, is there anything else to really cover here? Yeah, I agree that I would have liked to have seen a lot of these main cast members come back for more things, but it's fun to at least have had them come back in Main Who for a couple of roles here and there. Well, also, I would mention that when I previously saw this, for whatever reason, like bits and parts of it are missing, so it would suddenly jump and I was very confused. But also, with the stuff that was there, I only saw up to about the hour mark. Maybe a little less then. So I think they were getting ready for that mini Shalka reveal on the forehead, and I think that's the point where they stopped on me. It was right before that reveal. And then, for whatever reason, there was no videos for like a really long time. Like I said, there was some sort of issue with some of the other videos just not playing and all that other stuff, so I just gave up on trying to watch it at the time.
Oh, so those were the links that I found before Alex found the other link.
Oh,
I'm guessing.
Maybe, I don't know.
Okay.
This is back when it first came out, which I think was what
Oh,
was it,
so
2003,
you're saying
2004.
so you're saying no. Oh, so you're
No,
saying
I'm not
back,
saying. I'm not saying now. I'm saying
I thought you meant
back
today.
when it came
Okay.
out. Back when it came
Gotcha.
out, a long time ago. But back in
again-
my day, the internet wasn't always reliable.
Mhm. Yeah,
I
I
mean,
think I tried to watch it once before, back when it was still on the website, and yeah, I had some difficulties as well.
Yeah, like it's one of those things of like, yeah, it was 2003 or 4 when this came out, but also like, come on, BBC, if you're going to put it out online, maybe make sure that like the thing that people are watching it on is working properly, because
Yeah.
otherwise, there's no point.
Um,
And you can, of course, because it was 2003, we can't say, "Oh, just put it on YouTube," because YouTube didn't exist yet.
YouTube
don't
was
think.
around at the time. It wasn't as big as it is now, but it definitely was around. I think I first saw YouTube. Gosh, had been
Or I guess
2001. 2001, 2002 is when I first saw YouTube. Didn't know what it was at the time.
I mean, apparently it launched in 05, so
Really? I'm pretty sure YouTube was around
YouTube, yeah,
before then.
YouTube launched in 05.
Really, it must have been some other website
Might
that
have-
was very similar.
yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. There would have been a ton of sites like it back then.
So I suppose they're probably all fighting to be what YouTube eventually became. I suppose it just happened to be the
Yeah.
one that grabbed the most draw and was the easiest name to remember out of all of them, probably. But anyways, that's my final thoughts on Scream of the Shalka. We're starting to wonder now. So, Bill, your final thoughts.
Yes. So my final thoughts is I think I agree about the idea that this is more worth checking out than Death Comes to Time.
Yeah.
I feel like I felt like it was pretty forgettable when I first watched it, but I think that might have been trying to watch it on outdated Flash embeds that I was struggling with.
Mm-hmm.
Watching it all on a more recent upload, I think I enjoyed it a lot more. It's not perfect by any means. I mean, we've brought some issues, and I'm here comparing it to see what ranking it's most similar to in our past. Um, but overall, I enjoyed it. I want to see more of this Doctor. I want to see more of these companions. Of course, we won't see more of either of them, but that's a mark of a good introductory story.
Yeah.
Funny enough, it became about as much of an introductory story as a TV movie. Uh, it would have been very interesting if they had decided, actually, yes, this is canon. Christopher Eccleston is the 10th Doctor, which he kind of is the 10th Doctor, but not in the same way. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, so before going off down that rabbit hole, um, it was interesting. I enjoyed it. Again, not perfect. But I'm not sure if I had something else I was going to say. I don't think so. So I think that's the end of final thoughts, and we go on to ratings.
Hmm. This one's actually interesting because I feel like it's overall generally a lot better than Death Comes to Time, but I'm trying to figure how nice I can justify being. Um, you know what? Yeah, no. I think I was umming and ahhing a bit about how far up beyond Death Comes to Time I'd go. But yeah, I think there's enough good, and like the complaints I have aren't like, oh, this ruins the whole thing for me or whatever, necessarily. So I think I can be generous enough to give it a 4.
All right,
But there's
4.0.
no way it was ever getting higher than that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Matt.
Honestly, I feel the only thing that this needs is a bit of a rewrite tweak, and even then, only a tweak. So I'm at a 4.5.
4.5. Okay. So what I want to give this is like a 3.8, 3.75. We don't offer that.
Wow.
But I think it's more fitting of a 4.0 than a 3.5. So I will be the second 4.0. That puts us at an average of 4.17. And I noticed the rankings are not showing up correctly with some of our more recent things. But I'll just continue using it as we have been. A 4.17 would be. First off, it's on par with Big Finish, Destiny of the Doctor Shockwave, Class Night Visiting, and then of regular Doctor Who, Inferno, Legopolis, The Time Meddler, and Gridlock.
Hmm.
It is not as good as 10th Doctor Adventures, Death and the Queen, 6th Doctor, The Last Adventure, The End of the Line, Sarah Jane Adventures, Warriors of the Kudlak, Sarah Jane Adventures, The Curse of Clyde Langer, or Ninth Doctor Adventures, Girl Deconstructed, or Torch. Going to stop there, but there's a Torchwood, so Torchwood Reset. But it is better than Big Finish, Susan's War, Assets of War, Torchwood Sleeper, Torchwood End of Days, and Big Finish, The Chaos Pool.
And funnily enough, Curse of Fatal Death.
Oh yes, I missed that. Yes, Curse of Fatal Death is right there. All right. So that is. Oh, I didn't give a number, did I? So it
1.1?
would be at
Oh.
162. out of roughly 450 things reviewed. And that is all we have to say about Scream of the Shalka. Let us know in the comments what you thought of this week's episode if you've watched it. Don't forget to like the video since you've listened this far, and subscribe on YouTube to get our exports, or follow us on Twitch to get notified when we stream. Next time, we start to look at Scribe Awards Best Audio nominees, starting with The Third Doctor Adventures, The Annihilators, written by Nicholas Briggs, and starring Tim Treloar as the Third Doctor, and Daisy Ashford as Liz Shaw. And that one is about as long as a typical Third Doctor story, so that might take us some work. We'll see you then.
Couple hours. See you all next time.